mentioned number 2 or duality, so the fighting and healing. And also a lot of times when people say I gotta go lua, they're talking about a hole or a pit, which is partly true, and there was a place to that I'll show on the next slide. And also some of our teachers like to mention it's also a companion, okay? So you're not just by yourself. And we're gonna be, for the main part of this training, it's focusing on this, but don't forget the other parts that go along with it. So just some examples is, you would have stories of different warriors, teachers, they were able to tie opponents into bundles. There's even some people here today that they told me stories of their grandparents that they would go to a bar, tie somebody up in a bundle, and the police showing up after, they don't know how to unbundle that person. Yeah, so all these special skills and things. You could incapacitate people like a Jedi mind trick with the wave of a hand. The mind would go blank. And they would also dodge spears like bathwater. Yeah, like no problem at all. Maybe if you saw Chief of War this past week or something, you saw some of that spear flying that was happening. Yeah, on the dualistic side, they would break bones of passersby in some schools, and they would put them back into place. So they have the attack part, but also the healing, and also this more mentality of fear the man with the old cane. So he may be an old man, he may not look like a threat, but deep down he's actually a threat. So you try to carry that with you. You're not always big body, but you know when to be gentle, be kind, be cordial, and then when you have to turn the switch. So you learn how to turn the switch on the end. Like we mentioned a pit, a hole, but they actually would train in pits and holes. So if you're in a pit and a hole and you gotta fight, you have nowhere to run. Okay, you gotta know how to fight to get out of that hole. And then also there's different oli. Maybe you've read how many of you read that Black Dual Blind Warrior book? Okay, well, if you are able to find on top here, somebody with it, they have some oli in there that mention, one man jump in the pit, 2 men jump in the pit. But when they talk about that, they suggest that that's how many guys you can take on and throw into the pit. Okay, so there's that column behind it. And then lastly, we mentioned the companions. You have that kind of dualistic nature between your opponents, but also your comrades on the battlefield, and also the ancestors and amakua that you carry with you. So, like Oi Kalani said, hopefully you learn genealogy, but if not, how many ever you can go back. All these different how we're going to be sharing with you today, and you'll be learning. Call on whoever, because as long as you have, more than one, more than yourself, you can call upon somebody, your grandparents, great-grandparents, even further. That's just more mana and more energy that can help push you an extra mile. So all important answers are very important. Yeah, but going into the bone breaking part. So anybody saw that video of Mr. Silva over there? Yeah, so, if not, maybe watch it on YouTube, you might get an idea. Yeah, but it mentioned bone breaking. Okay, so it can be actual bone breaking like you see in that video, but as we learned from our teachers, it's also the dislocation of a lot of joints. The joints are the weak parts. Okay, so that's the easiest part to manipulate and break. And it's also a painful arch, a nerve strike. So the body has a lot of weak points and vital spots that cause pain, cause shock to an opponent. So if you can take control or take advantage of those points, you can manipulate the battlefield into your advantage. So try to attack these spots to incapacitate, knock people out even, okay? Or even do the worst things. And then also there's muscle tearing. So muscles are formed a certain way, and we know ways where you can attack it a certain way and you actually can tear pieces off of it. So very vicious. And the fighting system also has different call, which you'll learn more about tomorrow through our Aloha and other. We'll have displays of things, but a lot of different blunt instruments, like what they call neva or clubs. Yeah, neva and clubs, as well as ones for stabbing, like paho or daggers, as well as ihe, pololu, all these kind of things. So very large range for close fighting, but also they had distance. Yeah, so you have like the sling, the ma'a, they would throw a stone. So Maui is very famous for this. And also other things like tripping quarters. A lot of stories with this were even in the royal courts where Prince Kuhio, he was actually banned from learning this art because his auntie saw how fearsome it was, and she didn't want her nephew to learn it. You'll also be learning different battle formations, or papakao or kahuakao, where you'll be getting into formations as a group. So we'll be learning individual fighting skills, but it's on a battlefield, you're only as good as your neighbor, as your comrade. So you want to make sure that you try to raise up everybody next to you, and that everybody knows their place. Because if somebody has a weak spot, that's where the other army can target and overcome. So you'll be learning different strategies like this, where you'll be in a line, you have some other things, and what you can do to overcome. What parts of a formation you might be attacking. You might not go straight up the middle. If it's too strong, you might go on the edges. So try to use brains as well as brawn. So Lua is an ancient art. Okay, so there's no exact, we don't know the exact true origin, but there are some articles that we've come across that mention this one name, Paumakua. So this was it was described as the Lord of Moeana Imua, a high priest of Oahu, and he lived during the 10th century. So according to this story, he traveled to Kahiki, maybe the Marquesas, maybe Tahiti, and he was there for some time, and he came back with 2 priests. Okay, they describe him as kind of fair skin, blue eyes priests, Kai Kai and Maliu. They had longer names, but these are the ones that they were shortened to. Forget if it's in your handbook, but if not, this is the story. So once Paumakua came back, he also brought back with him a lot of knowledge, and with that knowledge, they established Pihanakalani. So this is an ancient university, you can think of it, where they taught 46 different sciences and arts, and it was based on Maui. So Pihanakalani was on Maui. And in this college or university, they taught different arts. So they have healing arts like La'olapa'o, Lomi Lomi. They also taught survival kind of arts, Mahi'ai, Lawaia, for farming and fishing. And then at least for the fighting, they started a college or a school, Kai Kanenaau, so the school of 40 techniques, 40 killing arts. Yeah, so this is the first Lua school, at least from the research we can find, that was also based on Maui. So you have the Kanenaau stream, so I suspect that it was close to that area. But so this is Pihanakalani and how it relates to the first Lua school. So Lua schools, maybe not all of them, at least for this one as an example, they typically taught more than just fighting. So like some people mentioned the healing part of it, because you can learn how to strengthen your body, how to condition it, how to fight, how to break bone, but you also have to learn how to survive on your own. Because if you're traveling as an infantry, as an army to another island to invade, and you're fighting for maybe months, you have to learn how to survive. You can't bring all the things with you. So you would have to maybe plant. You would have to learn how to get materials. So food is what feeds an army. As we, luckily, thank you our kitchen crew for providing food today. So they had to learn how to feed themselves, the importance of nutrition and hygiene. If they're gone that long, they have to take care of themselves. But also the other parts, like we mentioned, the plant medicine, la'olapa'o, using minerals, using lomi lomi, those kind of things. As well as our people, our society, it's a very spiritual one. Okay? So, we go to day, but we might always forget that aspect, but they're very spiritual. So they had a very intimate relationship with the Akua, with the Amakua. So in these schools, they also learned how to care for the gods that they prayed to, that interacted with, as well as how to appease and entertain them, as well as maybe other chiefs. So through hula, so there's that connection there, and through ha, which is more of a victory kind of art. And you'll be learning more about ha later in history. And Lua was a very important art. It was very secretive. Because you had all this knowledge, it wasn't meant for everybody. So you have this saying, you're going to be hearing huna na mea huna. So keep that which is secret or sacred secret. So you don't go out and share everything. So it's very exclusive. And it was taught mainly to the elite. So you have a lot of famous chiefs throughout history. These are just some names. Learn Lua from Pamemea, Kikuapiro, Kahekili, members of Kalakaua Squidward, so even Prince Pupio Klaniano Ole, very experienced and expert in Lua. And you might think, but then if they fought battles with commoners, didn't everybody learn? So the majority of the knowledge was all with the elite, but during times of battle, that's where they would have boot camps. Okay, so they would get whatever, all the different commoners that they could get, and train them maybe for a month in preparation for the battle, just basic skills and how to do battle formations, and then they would go out and fight. Any questions so far? Yeah.
How did we learn about like the history of the university, like the 10th century university? Is that all from chance or study, like the archaeology? Like, I guess, how did we gain this knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, definitely it's been passed on through, well, I guess, oral history, but at least for us, we have an article. But yeah, Lloyd Jerry can speak on that.
In Charles Kenn's material, you find that information as far as being maybe out. So it's during his research over 100 years ago that he picked that up through various. He worked with over 50 different people, putting what his knowledge of Goa was. And then when we started in 74, that was some of the material that he showed. So again, Kanenaau is a school of 20 basic and 20 advanced holders. And he learned from various people. A lot of it is oral, some of it is written. So, anyway, that's what it is. Jerry and Charles Ken.
Yeah, so if you don't know it, that's part of this presentation too. But you know, Olohe Jerry, he mentioned Olohe Ken. So Olohe Charles Ken, he was a man of many things, like a historian, but he's one of the last living Olohe of Lua, experts of Lua, and like the 50s and 60s, and there weren't many. So luckily, Olohe Jerry Walker, he found Olohe Ken, experienced. Sorry, not to tell your story, but just to shorten it. But experienced martial artist, but found Charles Ken, and he, and along with, it started bigger, but at least a group of 5. They were the only 5 that graduated Olohe under Olohe Charles Ken. So yeah, he was from the beginning, and that's what started their journey, and then moved on to our journey and now your journey. So that's the genealogy, short genealogy behind it. Yeah, thanks for that, Jerry. Yeah, good question.
Still down home, are schools still doing?
Not that, no. So it has been lost. So I think they kind of like suggested where the sites might be, but it's having a revival right now. So, but yeah, those schools have been lost. So speaking of schools, this is a general representation of what a pa or a halal was. So in our notes, they're represented as both a pa, which is an enclosure, or a halal, like a school of learning. Okay? So these are the basic structures. One thing to just point out is the walls weren't that short because it was a secret of art. The walls are actually taller, like 8-10-foot pillars of llama or other kind of wood that would make the enclosure so people can't see in. And there are different rows and ranks inside of the lua. So as you heard our introductions today, you might have heard some titles. So we'll just go over them. So Haumana, so that's you all. These are the students that learned and trained the lua from the beginning. And they followed the teachings and rules of the lohe because there were certain kapu and restrictions and rules that were put in place for them, for the learning. And they're the ones that showed the desire and sincerity to learn. So if somebody came, they would have to provide an offering. It could be sugarcane pole, it could be a pig. Later on, as you get initiated into the school, there would be certain other protocols, maybe secret passwords and holy that you might learn, which you'll learn after this one to get inside. And there was actually some selection process behind it. So at least back then, typically it was like a younger person, typically a male, but about 12 years old, because the body was so soft, flexible. Not nowadays where you can't go like this. They could do any kind of thing. So because if you're able to train them from that young and keep them in a condition, they would be very, very powerful, flexible, quick warriors. Typically it would be chast or chase. So you know what that means, okay? So that one, they would definitely have to make sure that they're mild-tempered and level-headed, because they wouldn't want to teach all these killing arts, all these skills to somebody who's going to then go on and just cause havoc in the villages. They don't want that. Next, in the rank or important or up the chain was the po'opua'a. They also called kiaipuka or po'ulu. So these were kind of the guardians, the first guardians of the pa or the halal. So they not only guarded the entryways, they also would be the ones that kind of test the student to enter. So either through a hua'alelo or a password or some other requirement. So you guys would be doing a ha'apomo, so an entry check in order to enter. make sure that they didn't have the wrong intention. If they did, then that's where they would, in stories, you would have different contraptions where they would have they would have like a enclosure up here, but it would be a big boulder. And if the person had a wrong intention, they would let them pass, but trip the cord, and a big boulder would fall right on them and kill them on the spot. Okay? Because they don't want the wrong people inside of there because of the sacredness and the toughness of this art. And they also challenged the Hamana when it was appropriate, okay? To make sure that you're always elevating the square. Like I mentioned, so keep the secrets which need to be kept secret. Because knowledge is sacred. In Lua, it's a matter of life or death. Yeah, it might, life and death for other people, but even for yourself. If you teach the wrong student and they come back and, do you in, what good is that? So you want to make sure that you get the right students in there. And that's why the master wouldn't typically share everything with the student. It always hold back one secret art, because just in case that student came back and tried to take over and fight the master, they got him covered. Okay? Yeah, next was the Kanaka Kali Kukui. So this is another important role because they kept the torches light or lit at night. So one thing we'll mention later is that duo, it was typically practiced at nighttime. They would fight battles daytime, anytime, but at least the art itself, because it was secret, the most secret time to practice is darkness. Okay, so they would practice at nighttime. So to practice, it would light the Kuina torches, given the Kanaka Kali Kukui's name. But even though this person went around lighting torches, and you might think, it's such a, I don't want to get in there practicing. They actually did, were very knowledgeable themselves because they went in there, but they were also being able to light the torches and helping to supervise and observe all the teachings of the Pa. So they're very knowledgeable dual warriors. And lastly, the highest, title or rank inside of a Pa or halal is the Olohe. Okay, so Olohe, one definition means hairless. Because these Lua experts, which is the other definition, is they, before battle, they would shave every single hair off of their body. Arm hairs, head hairs, eyebrow hairs, other kind of hairs, because if you ever got your hair pulled, even if it's like a small little one, that it hurts. Okay? And even like a slight pain, that's an advantage somebody else can have on you. So they would shave themselves before a battle. So they would be hairless. So these are Lua experts, masters and chief instructors of their schools. They kept the kapu'ihi, so this is different schools had different ones, but restrictions that kept the student safe, the teacher safe, the school safe, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. So they included things like, don't cause trouble, you cannot do alcohols and drugs, those kind of things. You must be chaste. So different schools had different ones, but they had to keep it and make sure it's upheld. And they're the ones that cared for, and they were bound to the Amakua. So the two different rituals that I'll mention, they're tied to the certain Amakua. And if they didn't do their duty to the Amakua, then the Amakua might turn their backs on them. In the Lua Halal, there are also different structures. So one was a kuahu. So this is an altar that paid homage and was a dwelling place for the actual deity themselves. So it's an altar that would have something related to that deity, and it'd be adorned with different la'au that represented different things. So, maile lauli. So maile, what is synonymous with maile? What do you guys know maile?
Fragrant.
Yeah, very fragrant. Okay, so it represented the fragrance of life because it's very sweet, but also the stench of death because death also has a strong smell. So this was the one that played in both worlds, but symbolized life and death. Also, Ohi'a Lehua. So, what is important about Ohi'a Lehua? Especially the Nene one, it's very low growing. Anybody ever saw, volcanic eruptions or what happens after a lava flow?
It's fast, they grow back.
Yeah.
It's the first thing to grow back.
Yeah, it's one of the first plants to emerge on top of a barren volcanic eruption. So it's a good foundation. So it serves a good foundation. Also, lehua is one of the terms for someone on the battlefield who was slain and foundation of the battle. So you want that on top of it. Hala. Yeah. So what is? Looking at the picture, what is something important of hala that inspires the Lua warrior? All monkey leaves. Can't wait to get it. What else?
The roots.
Oh, okay. What about the roots?
They're aerial.
Yeah, big area roots. Okay, so that's a good, strong foundation because spiritually and physically, when you're fighting, you got to make sure you're grounded. If you don't have a good solid base, good footwork, you're gonna get toppled over, thrown off, and okay, so hence the name maybe Hala. Okay. Eva. Anybody ever seen maidenhair fern or Eva grow? Where does it grow?
By water.
Okay, in wet areas, but on cliffs. So you might see it, maybe you'll see it later on, but anywhere there's kind of like stone walls, caves, you'll see it hanging. Yeah, it's very tenacious. So you want that tenacity as a warrior. You're gonna cling onto things, not let go. It'll be tough to get rid of. And then lastly, you have olapa. So olapa is a tree that grows in the forest. Anybody ever seen olapa grow in the forest? Okay, you gotta. Oh, yeah. Well, how does it move in the? Yeah, it flutters in the wind. So if you ever, maybe you guys can take a hike as a class, as a group, but olapa, it flutters. Okay, so olapa, in this sense, it means like to dodge, deflect, get out of the way. Okay, so you want to be able to do that on the battlefield. And what you want to do is the pala'a and palapalai, so the fiery intentions or negative intentions some might have against you, as well as the backstabbing kind of things. So any kind of things that your enemies might throw at you spiritually as negative prayers, the olapa would help to deflect it away. So you got you covered spiritually and behind your back. Yeah, so these are some of the plants. Different pa might have other ones, but these are the 7 main plants that were mentioned in our notes. There's also another one too, like manele, tonomea. It has its sticky berry too, so that's another one that sometimes comes up. So to become an aloe, there's some ritual behind it. So these are some of the true stories where you have like uniki and ailolo. So uniki is a demonstration of the person as a warrior. So years of study. Sometimes it would take 10, 12 years for a person to graduate from a school, and at that graduation, they would have to demonstrate to their teacher what they learned. Okay, so how many ever read Kikuo story? Any warrior Kikuo. Okay, so there's some cool stories in that book. So some of them include where, like we mentioned before, the Lohe would teach them everything they know, but they would hold one move for themselves, okay, just in case. And in Kikuo story, just to summarize it, close your ears if you don't want spoilers, but at his test date, his teacher, fought and kind of saw Kikuo and learned he retained everything he taught. But when he went to go show Kikuo and try to catch him off guard with that secret move, Kikuo was so skillful that he saw it coming and countered it and took down the master. And the master was impressed and happy that he had trained such a skillful warrior. So that's the kind of demonstration that was involved. Some other demonstrations included different structures in here. So maybe in that previous picture of the halal, maybe you saw this thing. If not, this is a kelpi aka opai. It's a stairway, the shrimp or house of cords. And basically it would be 2 pillars with 12 cords running between them, ulana cords, and the student, they would wiggle themselves, not using their hands or their feet, but just their body and their the strength of their body, going all the way up head first and then come all the way down head first too, okay, without falling, without getting tangled or tripping. So that would be the first one. There's also a second test to show the mind over matter ability of the student, where they would have their arms outstretched and they would have full-grown men stand on one fingertip, walk across their arms over their head to the other fingertip and back without flinching. Okay, if they flinch, they fail. So that was just showing the physical prowess, but also it takes a lot of mental power too. So that control of the warrior. And then the last one was kind of, the mind over matter for the physical environment. So they would have a ipu made out of a gourd, but it was very, very thin type of gourd where you could hold it up to the sunlight and you could see through it. So it was very, very thin. It wasn't hard like this. And they would place it on the ground as a half cup, and they would step on top with their 2 feet, and they would sit down cross-legged, and they would stand back up without cracking that gourd. So showing that they have the control over their body to make themselves light, full mastery of their body in relation to the environment. So that's just some examples, 3 examples of some of the tests that are mentioned in our writings. So showing some of the physical prowess, but also some of that magical side of warriors. And lastly with the binding. So for this one, there are a couple of different things. So some included where you had to roast a pig, and it wouldn't just be any pig. It would be a pig that you raised and you fed a specific diet, you cared for, you malamat very carefully. that you would then use this for this part of the ceremony. When they would cook it up, and you had to cook it a certain way where, based on how the pig turned out, your teacher would interpret different signs and omens and say, if you graduate or if something bad might happen, you should not fight in the future. So one story is Kikuo Kalani, where when he cooked his pig up for his Ailolo, that there was a crack that ran along the pig's, I think it was his right leg. The teacher said, be careful in future battles because you will get injured. But Kikuo Kalani decided to keep going into battles, and in one battle, our history teacher might know the exact one, but in one of the battles, they got shot in the leg with a musket and got injured. Okay, so this is very important for interpretation and protection of the student as they graduate afterwards. They also were required to eat certain parts of the pig, okay, for the essence of it. So they would eat the snout, okay, so that they always have good senses. They would eat the ears, so that they always listen to their surroundings, listen to the instruction of their teachers. They would eat the brain. Okay, the brain has all the knowledge, so that they retain everything that they've learned over the years of study. They would eat the feet, the hooves, because although we are warriors and are trying to be our best to be strong, sometimes you got to learn how to run and run fast. Okay, so you live another day. And lastly, they would eat the tail. Why would they eat the tail? Okay? So the tail, what body part is the tail right next to? Yeah, okay, right by the butt where the droppings come out. Very distinct area, but that's to remind the student that no matter how powerful you are, how many victories you have, you always remember to be humble, okay? Humility. So that's some of the main parts that do. And in other bindings, sometimes they would go out and face either a warrior or someone, and they would beat them up, maybe kill them, and eat the eyeball, okay, to consume it. They would give the eyeball as an offering to the god, and they would consume that eyeball because the eyeball was a connection through their realm and their life, and they would take that to consume the knowledge and bind themselves to their own. So another Kekuapi'o'a story. When Kekuapi'o'a was going for his Ailolo, his master recognized how powerful and how skillful of a warrior he was, that he realized that if Kekuapi'o'a were to just go up to somebody, even if it's a skilled warrior, no problem, he could take anybody's eye out. So he wanted to give his student a challenge. So he instructed his student to go and get the eyeball of a nyuhi, a tiger shark, a man-eating shark. Very, very tough. That's their realm. If you try to go out and kill a shark, 9 times out of 10, that shark's gonna get you. So Kekuapi'o'a, that was his test. So rather than just go into the water, his teacher instructed him, you gotta, just in battle, you don't go out and run out in battle and get 50,000 spears coming at you. You gotta use your brain. So what they did was, they sailed out onto a canoe. And on that canoe, they had greasy, smelly, rotting, putrid meat on top of there. Yeah, and you can see all the greases dripping into the ground or the water. So they would sail this, and they would dangle it either on top of the middle part of the canoe, or they have stories where it's dangling inside of the water behind them, and they're baiting the shark. Okay? So they finally get the shark, they drop it in the water, and the shark is hungry for that, but they're sailing along, and they're trying to chase the shark, make it tired. Kekuapi'o'a wants to jump in already. He's like, hey, I'm ready to go. But the teacher tells him, nah, just wait, not the right time. You want to make the shark real tired. You want the shark, when the shark is trying to chomp, what's happening to the shark? What's he ingesting also? Water. Yeah, a bunch of water. Okay, so you're making the shark heavy, full, sluggish. So you gotta wait for the right time in battle. You don't always charge it, you gotta be smart about it. So they kept doing that and waiting for the sign where the shark was ingesting enough water and enough grease. Then he said it's the right time to jump in. So that's when Kekuapi'o'a would jump in, come in behind, kill the shark with the gills through his spear, and claim his prize. So that's the story of just another one of my little. Okay. So we'll cover the next portion of Lua at another point in this training. But just wanted to give you a brief background about the art and our culture, our heritage that you'll be learning about these next few weekends. That it's a very high bar and standard that we're setting, because our ancestors, they were at this level. So we gotta do our best to uphold that, because if we don't, that art and that science is gonna be lost to history.